Hey everybody, welcome back to the Wolf Pit with another episode of Eating on a Budget. When times are hard and you don't have a lot of money and it comes to making dinner for your family, sometimes you just have to use your imagination and use what's on sale, which is always a good thing in both cases. Use this pork shoulder for example, also known as a Boston butt. You can routinely find these on sale for 99 cents per pound, which I did. So the whole roast only costs $7.64, which can be a very big investment when you're struggling. But this is one investment you're not going to lose on, and it's going to pay high dividends in the amount of meals for your family. So let's get this out of the package and get it seasoned up. And you can season with simple salt and pepper, or your favorite seasoning salt, or your favorite barbecue rub, or whatever you want to season it with. I just made a simple rub for it that can pretty much go with anything. Starting off with kosher salt, black pepper, granulated garlic, granulated onion, smoked paprika, a little bit of cinnamon and sugar out of my grandson's cinnamon sugar shaker. And I know you think that's weird, but trust me on this one. Sugar and cinnamon go great with pork. And I had to use his stash because we were out of brown sugar and cinnamon. And there are no exact measurements to this. If I end up not liking the food, I just give it to my neighbors. But you can use any combination of flavors you like. So once everything's mixed up well, very generously season all sides of your pork shoulder. We're going to cook this in the oven, and you are going to get a bark from it. I know some people are going to look at it when it's done and say it's burnt, but it's not burnt. That's bark, which is a concentrated flavor you get from the outside from the combination of the salt and the sugars and the spices. Of course, it's not going to have a smoky flavor or the nice smoke ring, but who cares? It's still going to be delicious. And if you happen to have a grill or a smoker and you want to use it for this recipe, go right ahead. It'll be even better. Or you can cook it in your crock pot or pressure cooker. It doesn't really matter in the end. We're just trying to cook a large piece of meat so we can make several inexpensive meals that'll feed your family. Once Mrs. Wolfpit was finished smacking it up, flipping it, and rubbing it down, it was time to go into a preheated 325 degree oven. If you have more time on your hands, you can cook it at a lower temperature, but it's not really necessary. But you don't want to go any higher than 325 degrees because sugar burns at 350 degrees, which turns it bitter. Now here's what our pork shoulder looks like after cooking at 325 degrees for 3 hours. At this point, the pork roast is actually done at 160 degrees. And technically, pork is safe to eat at lower temperatures than 160 degrees. But we're not going to talk about that today. That's for another video. So if you wanted to stop at this point and slice the pork, that would be okay too. But I'm going to cook it to the point to where it pulls apart, which is between 195 and 200 degrees or so. So we shanked our pork shoulder like a prison snitch with our thermometer. And you don't have to use a thermometer. I just like to use one because I'm lazy, first of all, but I also get too busy sometimes and lose track of time. But I only get busy when I'm not lazy, so I don't get busy very often. Now at this point, if you like, you can wrap the roast in aluminum foil, which will speed up the cooking process. Either way, put it back into a 325 degree oven until it's done. And like I said, some of you will say that's burnt, but that's bark. And bark is like fat, it equals flavor. And of course we had to break off a piece for a quality check. Now I let Mrs. Wolfpit do the honors and take 2 forks and pull the meat apart. At this point, if you find any unwanted fat, go ahead and discard it. And of course you're going to have a shoulder bone in the middle, and if the pork was cooked right, the bone will come out clean. Now continue to pull the pork or chop the pork if you like. And whether you're pulling the pork or chopping the pork, you must take time to take test bites as often as possible. Now, if I was making this pork for strictly pulled pork, I would add my barbecue seasoning at this point. But that's not the purpose of this video. This is a budget meal. So originally our pork shoulder weighs 7 3/4 pounds. Once it was done cooking and rendering, we had almost 6 pounds of cooked meat. So now you want to make as many meals as you can out of this pulled pork, which originally only cost you $7.64. Now, depending on your situation and your family size, you want to wrap this pork up in either half-pound or 1-pound bags, or little plastic containers. If you happen to have a vacuum sealer, which the bags are pretty expensive, so if you're on a real tight budget, that's a budget breaker. But if you happen to have a vacuum sealer and the bags on hand, that's even a better choice. So once you have all your meat wrapped up, stick it in the freezer. Buy a bag of hamburger buns for 99 cents, a coleslaw kit mix that comes with the dressing for $2.39, and a can of pork and beans for $1.09. And then a couple splashes of barbecue sauce or hot sauce you have in the fridge. Then you can do the typical thing that most people do with pulled pork and make barbecue pulled pork sandwiches. So the total cost of this meal, including the 1 pound of pulled pork for $1.53, is $6. And depending on your situation or your family size, you can make 4 to 8 servings for $6. That's as low as 75 cents a serving. And I already know that there's going to be a scooter or 3 out there that says, I could eat all that food by myself. Thanks in advance for letting us know, Scooter. We'll ensure you get a participation trophy at the end of the year. If you're new to the channel, first of all, welcome aboard. And just so you understand these types of budget meals that I'm doing, I try to make meals for people who are on extreme budgets and struggle to eat day to day. So for instance, when I say this will make up to 8 servings, that's obviously going to be 8 very small servings. But for 8 hungry, struggling people, a small serving tastes a whole lot better than starving. If you don't want pulled pork sandwiches, then you make a pulled pork pizza. Now the items I'm showing are just examples, especially the crust. I'm not a baker at all, and I don't even try to bake. But I know there's a lot of you, the people, that can make a pizza crust much cheaper than buying a pre-made pizza crust. So you'd be saving even more money. In this video, I'm using a pre-made, pre-formed Mama Mary's pizza crust, which costs $4.49 for 2 crusts, which is pretty expensive when you're on a budget. But there's an alternative if you don't want to spend $4.50 for pre-made crust. And you can buy a 1 pound bag of pre-made dough for $1.99. And I've used these dough balls before, and they're good. And depending on what kind of pizza you want to make, you can buy a small can of tomato sauce for 77 cents and doctor it up with flavors you like. Or if you want to stick with the barbecue theme, use barbecue sauce. And then of course, buy the cheese of your choice. And you'll see why I chose cheddar cheese in just a second. Because this is just a funky version of a barbecue pizza I threw together with what I had on hand. But funky or not, it was delicious. And like I said, we used a pre-formed, pre-made Mama Mary's pizza crust in this recipe. So we coated the bottom with the barbecue sauce and then a handful of cheddar cheese. And then for each pizza, we used a half a pound of the pulled pork. And just to be creative, and because I could, and because I had them left over, I added some caramelized red onions. And then with another layer of cheddar cheese. And then last but not least, I had a Granny Smith apple laying around. Don't laugh, it was free, it was on my counter, and believe it or not, pork and apples go really good together. So if you make the pizza exactly like I did, with the pre-made crust, the barbecue sauce, the pulled pork, and the cheddar cheese, the total cost is $8.68 for 2 pizzas. Each pizza had 7 slices, so you have 14 slices altogether, which comes out to be 62 cents per slice. If you wanted to make more of a traditional pizza and use the tomato sauce and the bag of fresh dough, it would come out even cheaper at $5.96 or 43 cents per slice. Either way you decide to do it, it would be an inexpensive pizza night that would be perfect if you're on a budget. If you're not in the mood for pizza, you can have some pork carnitas street tacos. All you need is a pound of the pulled pork, add your favorite Mexican style seasonings to it, add a pack of corn tortillas, a cucumber, some radishes, cilantro, onion, and a lime. And you don't have to use any or all of those ingredients. Use what you like. You are the muchacho of your street taco. So you can make this meal, including the cost of the pork, for $7.25. Street tacos generally have 2 tortillas each. There's 18 tortillas in the package, so you can make up to 9 tacos for 81 cents each. Remember people, we're trying to survive, not get full. One small taco in your stomach is much better than no tacos in your stomach. Now the next meal we're making, you better be sitting down for, because it's certainly different, but it's certainly delicious too. And the funny thing is, this recipe is the least expensive, but it'll feed the most people. Now if you're wondering what it is, it's called Memphis barbecue spaghetti. It was invented by a man named Brady Vincent in Memphis, Tennessee of all places. And all you need to make it is your pulled pork, an onion, a bell pepper, a bottle of barbecue sauce, and a pound of spaghetti. And that's it. And of course you can add some of your favorite barbecue rub if you have some, or some other seasonings to spice it up to the way you like it. Now in a large pot, add your pulled pork, your sliced up onion, and your sliced up bell pepper. Cook that for about 5 minutes until the vegetables begin to soften. Then add the barbecue sauce, and then rinse out the bottle of barbecue sauce with water. Then give it all a good mix. And then add 2 more cups of water. Bring it all back up to a simmer and add 1 pound of spaghetti noodles. And then continue cooking until your spaghetti noodles are done. And that's it. Now this whole meal of Memphis barbecue spaghetti only costs $5.06. And that's including the pulled pork. The box of spaghetti has 8 servings in it. So with that being the case, each serving is only 63 cents. Now this next meal, the servings sure aren't small, because there's a whole lot of stuff you can put in it besides just the pork. So all you need is a can of black beans, rice, diced tomatoes with green chilies, which is, by the way, much cheaper than salsa, and you can doctor it up the way you want to, and some shredded cheese, and some burrito-sized flour tortilla shells. And then make your pork carnita burrito however you like. But a way to make this stretch out even further is to cook the whole bag of rice and mix everything in with the rice and then build your burritos. Especially if you invited Scooter over for dinner. He would eat all the meat in one setting. Once you have everything in your burrito that you want, just roll it up and enjoy. So there's 5 super easy, super delicious, and super inexpensive meals that you can make with a $7 piece of meat. But there's so many more things you can do with leftover pulled pork, or pulled beef, or pulled chicken. But the meat doesn't have to be pulled at all. Cook it however you like it. Just do it in a form where you can make many meals with it. If you don't have $7 to spend on the whole roast, ask your meat man to cut it in half. Sometimes at the sale price they may not do that, but it doesn't hurt to ask. If he says no, just get mad and start knocking things off the shelf. You tell him you're going to keep knocking things off the shelf until he cuts your roast in half. Of course I'm kidding about that, but if you do it, please video it and send it to me. If you like this type of budget meal that I did today, where you can make many meals out of one piece of meat, let me know in the comments and give me new ideas. Thank you all very much for watching, and I'll see you soon.